Welcome to Hermetic Journeys. Okay. Yeah, this is video number 3 in a series. Okay. The first video was an overview of the Atalanta Fugiens book by Maier. Okay. The second video was a look at the first emblem. Okay. The wind carries him in its belly. Okay. This one is we're looking at the second emblem. I'm really excited to do this. All right. So a couple of things first before we get into it. First of all, I want to say that I do listen to feedback, so some things have been changed up a little bit. Particularly the opening music, which I had written, for this purpose. My oldest daughter making the comment that it sounded cheesy. So I got rid of it, and I've written a new piece, and I hope you like it. It's more appropriate, perhaps, as Amy was saying, more appropriate for the video, I think, for the time period we're talking about. Okay, the 1600s, that kind of thing. All right. So the other thing is that, we did cover a lot. The first 2 videos covered a lot of ground. Okay, this video isn't going to be as extensive because we've covered a lot of ground from the previous 2. Okay, but Mikey, I want you to pay attention. Okay, just kidding. Anyway, so let's begin by looking at this first emblem. Okay, if we have it up here, you can see the central figure here is a woman who appears to be representing Mother Earth, and she is nursing what I suspect would be that little sulfur baby that we saw in the first emblem, right? If we go to the lower left, we see what appears to be a she-goat nursing a little baby, all right? And then if we move over to the right, there appears to be a she-wolf nursing 2 babies, possibly twins, okay? So there's obviously a theme going on here, all right? Something about nursing, the wild and Mother Earth and that kind of thing. So let's take a look at the epigram, because remember, the epigram is basically a poem about the emblem, okay? And then we'll delve deeper into the discourse, all right? So here it is. Romulus is said to have been nursed at the coarse udders of a wolf, but Jupiter to have been nursed by a goat. And these facts are said to be believed. Should we then wonder if we assert that the earth suckles the tender child of the philosophers with its milk? If an insignificant animal nursed such great heroes, shall he not be great who has the terrestrial globe as a nurse? Okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, we're going to get into that, as you know. Okay, let's delve into the discourse. Now, of course, we're talking about, obviously, we've got Michael Maier tells us here it is a Jupiter being nursed by a she-goat, all right, and Romulus being nursed by a she-wolf, okay, and then we have the baby, which represents, of course, the philosopher's stone, okay, that's why it's called the philosopher's child, okay, because it was known by many names, okay, but that's what he's talking about here. So Mother Earth is nursing the philosopher's child, and these other mythological figures are being nursed by wild animals. Well, who are these mythological figures? We have to kind of talk about that first, because I did a lot of research on them. Okay, we're talking about Roman mythology this time. Remember, the last emblem was about Egyptian and Greek mythology, all right? Well, now we're talking about Roman mythology. And to be honest, as we kind of touched on in the last video, Roman and Greek mythology, some of the characters are interchangeable for the most part, okay? So, let's take a look at the lower left, all right, at Jupiter being nursed by a she-goat. Well, the story here is that Jupiter's father was Saturn, okay, the god Saturn. Jupiter, of course, I don't know if you know this, but let's clarify, he was the king of the gods, all right? Even though Saturn was his dad, Jupiter was still the king, kind of like Zeus was to the Greeks, okay? This is Jupiter, right? Well, Saturn got wind of a rather nasty prophecy that one of his children would succeed him, all right, but overthrow him, not succeed, overthrow him, all right, usurp him, all right, and he was upset about this, okay? So what does Saturn do? Well, he eats his children. Yeah, so he eats his children. So Opis, who was Saturn's wife, okay, or consort, well, every time she hands him one of the children, she has a baby, right? Hands him the child, and he consumes it, all right? Pretty horrible, right? So she eventually gets wise to this because he consumes quite a few people, right? We're talking about Mars and a couple of other folks, okay? So what happens is she, instead of handing, she has Jupiter, all right, the child, and instead of handing Saturn Jupiter, okay, she takes a big stone and she wraps it up in swaddling clothes, as they say, all right, and she hands him Jupiter, well, a big stone, and he thinks it's Jupiter. So what does he do? He swallows it, okay? So she takes Jupiter and goes to the island of Crete, right? And leaves him in a cave with, and it's not terribly clear here, with either a she-goat named Almathea, right? Or a nymph that's taking care of a she-goat that nurses Jupiter as a child. And then he, of course, grows up. And then he goes back, you know, when he's a man, and he knows this terrible story. He gets Saturn to vomit up his brothers and sisters. Okay, so, and then they all get together and they kill Saturn. It's a family affair. But anyway, so that's the strange and odd story of Jupiter and the she-goat. Okay, now we look to the right. We see, of course, this she-wolf nursing twins. Okay, well, in the history of Roman mythology, we've got twins. Okay, there's lots of twins in these myths. All right, Romulus and Remus. All right, and they are the children of Rhea, Sylvia, and Mars. Okay, the god Mars. Well, the story is right, very similar story to Jason and the Argonauts. Actually, okay, we have an evil, they have two brothers, okay, and one is evil, his name is Amuleus, and we have Numitor, who's the good guy, he's the king. Numitor is the king, Amuleus overthrows him, banishes him, and Numitor's daughter, who is Rhea Silvia, he sends her to the temple of Mars, right? So the evil king Amuleus does everything he can to prevent Rhea Silvia from having children, and one of the meaner things that he does is he forces her into service to the goddess Vesta, thus requiring her to become what we call a Vestal virgin. Interestingly enough, I've heard that phrase many times. I never knew what it was until, of course, I read Atalanta Fugiens, and it makes you delve into these areas of study that no one would normally venture, unless you're a scholar, right? So anyway, so he does this to her, okay? And so being in service of the goddess Vesta means celibacy for 30 years. Well, she ain't having kids, all right? So he's trying to do everything he can to enforce this. Much to his dismay, the god Mars, because she's in the temple of Mars, the god Mars takes a shine to her, and I'll put this delicately, has his way with her, all right? Although he forces himself upon her, he assures her that her offspring will become great heroes. Wonderful, right? So anyway, she, of course, becomes pregnant and has Romulus and Remus, and of course she loves them because they're her children. And thus, Romulus and Remus are born. So, of course, the evil King Amuleus says, I'm not going to stand for this. These guys are going to come back and they're going to overthrow me. So he sends two of his not too bright henchmen to kidnap the twins, Romulus and Remus, and throw them into the river Tiber. Well, they do this, unfortunately for them, and fortunately for the twins, they throw them in the river in a little cradle, and the cradle floats down the river. Okay, where it is found by a she-wolf, right, who picks them up, and even though they're humans, her motherly instincts overtake her, and she takes them to this cave, another cave, by the way, where she nurses them, and then, of course, they grow up, and they find out what happened, okay, and they take care of things, right? Now, after they get rid of the evil King Amuleus, right, they decide, well, we want to build a big city, right, and we're gonna build a city, right? So Romulus says, well, we're going to build it on this hill, and Remus says, no, we're going to build it on this hill, right? So they kind of argue about this, and I say, okay, well, let's let the gods decide. Now, this is the weird part. as if the rest of it wasn't weird enough. The way Romans decided things, all right, was through a method called augury, all right? Now, what augury is they were people who were from aristocratic families who were chosen to observe the flights of birds, okay, as a sign from the gods as to whether it was an auspicious sign or an inauspicious sign, and that's where the word auspicious and inauspicious comes from augury, okay? So they would watch the flight patterns of birds and say, oh, okay, we can go to war now. We can go invade these folks because the gods gave us a sign. They also use chickens, which is really weird. If the chicken, they throw food in front of the chicken. If it picked up the food, it was an auspicious sign. If it didn't, it was an inauspicious sign. I'm not making this stuff up, okay? This is really, really weird. But it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's really crazy. So anyway, so what happens is Romulus and Remus decide to do this augury thing, right? So they're sitting down, one on each hill, and Remus immediately sees 6 vultures, right? And flying in a circle, whatever, and he says, that's a sign from the gods. We're going to build the city on this hill, and we're going to call it Rem. We're going to name it after me, right? Romulus looks up, and he sees 12 vultures circling around, and he says, oh, no, that's a sign from the god. Mine's better than yours. 12 vultures as opposed to 6 or whatever, right? So they come to blows. They get really upset. They start arguing, fighting. They come to blows, and Romulus kills his brother. He kills Remus. Whew, man. Well, anyway, so Romulus builds the city, and he calls it Rome, named after himself. So Rome was founded on a murder. So there you go, all right? So that's what's happening. So I know I went a little further, but I think it's kind of an interesting story with the augury and everything. So that's what we're looking at here. Okay. So then, what are we looking at here with this central figure, the mother nursing the philosophical child? All right. So we're going to read from the discourse to straighten that out. Okay. And Michael Maier is going to give us little tidbits until we figure it all out, like he always does. Right. We know this from the last video. Okay. So. He says, a young human being may be nourished by the milk of animals because it can be assimilated. But according to physicians, the mother's milk is the most beneficial because it passes on to the child the substance and strength of the mother. Okay? All right, so let's think about this, right? Both of these heroes, Jupiter and Romulus and Remus, were nursed by these animals. Well, Jupiter was nursed by a she-goat. Goats are kind of harmless, right? But Romulus and Remus were nursed by this she-wolf, all right? Well, obviously they took on some traits there, and Romulus really took on that trait when he killed his brother. So obviously, if they were nursed by a human, they wouldn't have taken on, that's what Michael Maier is saying here, I think. He wouldn't be taking on these nasty, animalistic tendencies. So, a little further down, the same happens in philosophical work. It is regulated by nature, just as is the growth of the child in the mother's womb. So also a father, a mother, and a nurse have been attributed to the philosophical child. Okay, so he's saying that nature takes care of these things. All right, but he's invoking once again the Emerald Tablet, where he's saying the sun is its father, the moon is its mother. Okay, and the earth is its nurse. Direct lift from the Emerald Tablet. So that's why I spent some time on that. So because it's going to make an appearance occasionally throughout this process. Okay? Making sense so far? Mikey, are you paying attention? Here we go. We're going to go over to here. The retort is artificial. It is true, but it makes no difference whether a nest is made by the hen or by the farmer, for the coming into being of the egg will be the same. Okay? So what is he saying here? Okay, we're talking about, remember, Jabir's theory of mercury and sulfur and the metals, and how the earth is the womb of the metals, right? And these metals develop over time. Okay, so he's comparing this to the vessel, or the retort, as it's called, where metals are placed and then heat is applied in the alchemical laboratory to speed up that process. All right, and get these metals to transform into gold, or the philosopher's stone. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. And he's justifying it. He's saying it's okay to do this in the laboratory even though it may appear not to be a natural process. And he uses also the philosophical egg, and that'll come up in a future emblem, okay? Where an egg is the same kind of a thing as a vessel in an alchemical lab, okay? It's got this. It's a vessel that's holding the ingredients of processing this being, okay? This entity, this development, okay? Now he says something really beautiful here at the very end, and it's actually a lovely nod to Mother Nature, okay? He says, "So art and nature assist each other. Nevertheless, nature appears to be the teacher and art the servant." Okay, so nature, the deep reverence and respect alchemists have for nature, and the process of creating the philosopher's stone is known as the philosophical art or the great art. Okay, so that's why he's saying, that's why he says, nature appears to be the teacher and art the servant. So the alchemist is a servant of nature, all right, learning from nature, accelerating these processes in the alchemical lab, all right, to bring about the perfection of the metals, the transmutation of the metals, and the perfection of the alchemist, okay, to become more spiritual, more aware, more in line or in tune with the natural processes and more in tune with nature, okay, to live within the natural environment, not conquer it, okay. So that's what we're talking about here, all right? So to recap, we're talking about, if we look at this picture, we've got the two animals nursing these Roman mythical heroes, right? And then we've got Mother Earth nursing the philosophical child, which is, of course, the philosopher's stone, right? So, and Michael Maier is saying, well, Mother Earth indeed, does it the right way, obviously, and in the right amount of time, but we are going to assist Mother Earth. We're going to learn from nature to accelerate these processes to create the philosopher's stone. So that's what this emblem is about. At least that's what I think it's about, okay? I hope this all makes sense to you. Now we're going to take a look at the music, because we didn't really explore the music to the first emblem, because we kind of talked about it in the overview of the first video, all right? So now we're going to talk about the music, and we're going to listen to it, okay? All right, so here comes the music. Hello. Okay, you came back. We're here to talk about the music to the second emblem, The Earth is Its Nurse, of Atalanta Fugiens. Okay, but before we delve into that, I need to talk about something and introduce our mystery guest for this video. In a previous video, I spoke about, I briefly mentioned that the number 3 is a very important number concerning Atalanta Fugiens, all right? But I didn't go into any detail to explain why, and I'm going to do that now. Okay, so in order to clarify that, I need to introduce our mystery guest, okay? Now, his birth name was Philippus Areolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. Okay, I'll say that again. Philippus Areolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, okay? Now, luckily for us, he chose the name Paracelsus to be widely distributed, okay? Now, Paracelsus is an interesting name because it's kind of not a name. Para is a Latin word that means above, and Celsus was actually a reference to a Roman physician who lived long ago, all right, who came up with the theory of bloodletting and using leeches to cure disease, okay? So Paracelsus was sort of an arrogant guy from what we understand. He actually was not welcome in many places because he looked at what physicians were doing around his time, which is the early 1500s, which was, draining people's blood. Because they looked for 4, what they called humors, 4 different components to human blood that needed to be in perfect harmony with each other. So if someone was sick, they assumed that there was a disharmony there, and they needed to drain their blood and give them a transfusion to cure them of the disease. Okay, well that obviously didn't always work. Okay, sometimes it did work for people with high blood pressure, but typically disease isn't cured that way. All right, we know that today, right? Well, actually, we know that because some of the things that Paracelsus did. Paracelsus, his father, was a physician, and Paracelsus followed in his father's footsteps. However, Paracelsus became involved in alchemy, astrology. He was a Renaissance man, if you will, okay, from the Renaissance. So anyway, he discovered that using different combinations of mercury, sulfur, and salt could be, in varying combinations, can cure disease. In fact, at the time of his practicing medicine, syphilis was rampant throughout Europe. And using mercury, small doses of mercury and some other configuration, he was able to cure syphilis, okay? Which is amazing because no one could figure out what was going on. So he adopted, remember our old friend Jabir, the amazing alchemist, the amazing Arabic alchemist from the 8th century? He adopted the mercury and sulfur component, all right? But he added salt because he realized that when you're breaking things down in the laboratory, they're reduced to ash, which is like a salt, okay? So he adopted the idea of something called the tria prima. In other words, the three primary ingredients, mercury, sulfur, and salt. And using different combinations of mercury, sulfur, and salt, he was able to cure some diseases, okay? And he also came up with the idea of giving people medicine in small doses. So it can be medicine that would, in a large dose, would be harmful or kill you, all right? But he decided to do it in small doses and found that that was effective in curing diseases, making people feel better. It's a cool thing, right? Now we have to take this to the next step. Paracelsus took it to the next step, all right? He looked at mercury, sulfur, and salt as body, spirit, and soul, okay? Mercury was spirit, sulfur was soul, and salt was the body. So you had sulfur, salt, and mercury relating to spirit, soul, and body. So this was adopted by Michael Maier, and that's why you'll see a lot of threes in here. Not only that, of course, you know, if you're a Christian, you have the Holy Trinity, so that was also applied to the Trinity by people who were ultra, like Heinrich Kuhnrach, you know, who was a very religious guy. I showed you the oratory in the laboratory, right? Very faithful Christian and alchemist. Okay, so that's where the three comes into play in Atalanta Fugiens, okay? In fact, and that was our mystery guest, Paracelsus. Okay, in fact, in the title page of Atalanta Fugiens, and I've got it up there, as you can see, beautiful title page, and at some point we'll go over what's going on in that title page. But the text in the title page reads, "The Fleeing Atalanta," which means new chemical emblems regarding the secrets of nature, partly suitable for the eye and the mind, by means of copper plates and the mottos. So right here, he's saying the eye and the mind. So it's a pleasant thing to look at these beautiful images created by Matthias Marion, right? And the motto is the title, remember. Epigrams and annotations accompanying them, partly suited to the ear and the refreshment of the soul, by means of 50 musical fugues for 3 voices. All right. So now he's saying, hey, you know that we have the motto, we've got the epigram, we've got the emblem, and we have the fugue, and these are all to be, as you'll find out later on, he gets very specific, to be contemplated. All right, as a whole, of which 2 correspond to a simple melody. Okay, we'll get into that when we look at the music, which is suited to be sung in strophes of 2 lines. Strophes is a Greek word meaning 2 parts of a poem, 2 lines of a poem. Emblems which lend themselves to being looked at, read, contemplated, comprehended, judged, sung, and listened to with particularly great pleasure. Well, there he's telling you these things. It's all to be contemplated, comprehended, judged, sung, and listened to with great pleasure, right? He's telling you, enjoy the book, you know, delve into it, like we're doing. That's what we're doing, right? And it says, by Michael Maier, member of the Imperial Consistory, Doctor of Medicine, Knight of the Corps d'Elite, etc. Okay? All right. So, the information I'm about to present to you is not of my own doing. Okay? I did not figure this stuff out, this part. This is from a remarkable scholar named Donna Belak, who has put together a cadre of scholars called Team Atalanta, all right? And these scholars, they have a musicologist, she's mathematicians, she's got all these people studying Atalanta Fugiens. I strongly suggest, if you fall in love with this book like I have, you check out their videos. Incredible stuff, all right? She is working with a musicologist whose name is Lauren Ludwig, okay? And this musicologist, Dr. Ludwig, figured out that, because of his vast knowledge and experience, that Michael Maier composed only 10 of the 50 fugues. Only 10 of them are original. And I mentioned this in the first video, right? But not to this extent, right? The other 40 were taken from a composer named John Farmer, who published them in 1591. And they were compositions that this gentleman did, and that were used in various ways by people. In fact, they were called ways, but not W-A-Y-S. Okay? So, Michael Maier took some of these compositions and he modified them slightly and made them his own. Okay? Apparently that wasn't an unusual thing to do back then. Well, you know, okay, that's fine. Now, if we look at the music for this particular emblem, if we look at the three, there are 3 voices, like Michael Maier says, 3 voices, right, and 50 fugues. So at the top we have Atalanta, right? Then the first 2 stanzas, and then below that we have Hippomenes, and then below that we have the golden apple. Okay. Now what's really cool here is that Atalanta, if you notice, the notes start before anybody else. It's kind of like and they explain this in Donna B. Like's video, like a row your boat thing. Okay. So Atalanta starts first, then Hippomenes follows, because of course he's trying to catch up with her because she's such a fast runner, and the music reflects this too, which is so cool. And then the apple, they're just like it's being dropped, right? So they're just, you know, single notes, right, being dropped, you know, as Atalanta's picking up the apples. So not only, I mean, the layers of complexity that Michael Maier thinks about. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. You know, when you start looking into the intricacies of this fascinating book, it just blows my mind. You know, it's really crazy. So let's take a listen to this particular fugue, all right? And then we'll close out the video with my final thoughts and final comments, okay? So here it is. Fugue number 2, Atalanta Fugiens, The Earth is Its Nurse. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that beautiful musical interlude, all right? And now I'm going to tie this up in a nice package with a beautiful little bow, all right? And we're going to solve all these questions or any remaining questions we may have. Remember, this is all about the number 3, all right? So, if you noticed, when you listen to the music, there were 3 different sections, okay? That's because the fugue in its entirety is repeated 3 times. Then we have Atalanta, Hippomenes, and the golden apple. 3 characters in this, okay? All right? And then, of course, we have mercury, sulfur, and salt. So how does this tie in with Atalanta Fugiens? I'm going to tell you. And Michael Maier gives us a little tiny clue in the author's epigram. Okay, it's a poem before the book begins. All right. So I'm going to read just a section here. All right. What is Hippomenes true wisdom knows, and whence the speed of Atalanta flows? She with mercurial swiftness endued, which yields by sulfur's prudent strength pursued. So, Atalanta must represent Mercury, and Hippomenes represents sulfur. The golden apple, the body, okay? Salt, okay? Isn't that cool? And let's not forget about the emblem, which also has 3 components to it. So, Mercury, sulfur, salt. Atalanta, Hippomenes, the golden apple. 3 again, all right? So that's the conclusion to this video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for those who subscribed. The subscriptions keep growing, which is wonderful. And thank you for those who watched and are just enjoying it. And thanks for those who stick with it, because yeah, this stuff is really deep and heady, and I'm doing my best to figure it out for myself and for you, okay? So hopefully through this experience, we are becoming the perfected beings of the Philosopher's Stone, right? Just by going through this stuff. Thank you very much for watching. And the next video will be, well, there's going to be 2 videos coming up. One is going to be on alchemy, the alchemy video part 1. All right, the next video is going to be on the 3rd emblem, okay? So until next time, have a great whenever, however long it takes me to make these things. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye.